All right, and welcome to Fast Break Breakfast, NBA podcast. My name is Keith. Got a big show today. Jackson Frank's going to come on and talk about the Ben Simmons situation. And then in the last drop, Daman Rangoola will stop by and talk about the very wealthy Los Angeles Lakers. But right now, John Burr. John, how's it going?
Good actual morning, Keith.
It is actually the morning, and you're the third person I've recorded with today. So we've been going hard.
Business-like.
Early bird gets the worm. No, this morning, Thursday morning, September 2nd, my question.
Ramen joke acknowledged.
Oh, nice. My question to you is, how many centers is too many? How many centers, not centers, how many centers is too many for an NBA team?
Is it like the old NFL adage, if you have three quarterbacks, you have none?
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. I think it was like the college football one. The college football one?
Two doesn't work, but I feel like if you have like three guys of the same quality in the NBA, you're probably in trouble.
So
like it's okay to have a center and a defined backup center, but if it's like a pitching rotation of centers, you're probably
so last year the Wizards did this.
Yes.
Where they had Alex Len, Robin Lopez, and Daniel Gafford. Because apparently Daniel Gafford gets very tired very quickly. Very relatable NBA player. He just gets very tired. There's a lot of running. He's just like, Coach, I got to come out.
Is it tired or is it fouling?
No, he literally apparently gets really tired. He doesesn't have the stamina to play that.
Do you realize I'm going to start calling Chuck Gafford now?
That's fine. Just call him Gafford. He won't even understand what we're talking about.
Also, who the player is.
I think the Wizards are doing it again this year. With the rotation, they got a bunch of centers. But right now, there's a couple of teams. One, the Cleveland Cavaliers have loaded up.
Right.
They have a bunch of guys who are fours, but are so bad on defense they can't play four. Mm-hmm. So now, like the Cleveland Cavaliers, they already had Jared Allen, their one rim protector. They drafted Evan Mobley, who maybe is going to be awesome. Then they got Larry Markkinen. They already have Kevin Love. They got our guy from Florida State, Kabingale. And then they just signed Taco Fall. I mean, I know it's not a guaranteed deal. That's like 6 centers and not to be outdone. Big news for NBA fans. On Thursday morning, Shams is announcing that apparently LaMarcus Aldridge is back. LaMarcus Aldridge is back. And where does he want to go play? Why? He wants to go be the 6th string center on the Brooklyn Nets, actually displacing DeAndre Jordan, who by my count is the 7th center on the Nets. And now everyone
Are you counting
thinks
Bruce Brown?
I am counting Bruce Brown.
Okay,
he's their best center,
best
despite being the shortest. No, everyone is picking the Nets as the best team in the East. I think they're the gambling favorites for the NBA title. They clearly could have won the title last year if Kevin Durant's foot was a tiny bit smaller, if James Harden was not injured, if Kyrie Irving was not injured. They seem like the best team maybe in the NBA right now, but is 7 centers too many? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's funny because I feel like the best center for the Nets is now the center under fire for Cleveland, Jared Allen. But I think like this is okay for the Nets. Like gives them a chance to figure it out. I don't know what LaMarcus Aldridge brings to the table, but I will say this. I think he's bringing more to the table than Paul Millsap, their other recent acquisition.
You haven't been a fan of Paul Millsap's last few years.
Well, I really liked Paul Millsap for a long time.
Yeah.
But then because we watched so much Nuggets, he's just bad. This is
where we don't see the same. We watch the same Nuggets games.
Talk about a guy who seems to get tired quickly. I think Paul Millsap is now like a regular season basketball player. You can play him. You can grind him through bad teams all year round. When the good teams show up in the playoffs, he gets exposed. But that might work for the Nets. Particularly since they have like the eminently frustrating Blake Griffin, who is apparently still awesome when on the Nets.
So is Blake Griffin the starting center? I think he probably is.
I guess, but I don't understand. Like, there's like a new element to basketball that I don't think I either didn't notice before or is actually new, and that's like the player who plays kind of when he wants to. Like and the guy who's willing to I don't know, like maybe Paul Millsap when he's used in a different way, maybe he'll suddenly be useful again. Maybe he was disgruntled in Denver.
See, again, this is where we totally disagree. Right. I thought he was like a good backup center last year. Like I thought he was.
Yeah, but maybe that's not what
they needed.
Maybe it's not what he wanted to. Maybe that's not what he wanted to play though. So, I'm actually trying to draw like a correlation to like the Kevin Love situation and the Blake Griffin situation. Like, I thought Blake Griffin was just bad. He's not bad.
Oh yeah, he wasn't bad. He wasn't trying. So I think it is different.
Kevin Love might not be bad. He might not just. That is a great question. What if they get Kevin Love too? What if there actually is a buyout and Kevin Love says, I want to be the 8th center on the Nets? Right now, I'm going to count them up. I'm going to name them off if you're having trouble naming them at home. I think Blake Griffin's the starting 5. Okay.
Kevin Durant, he's a 4, even though he could honestly play some 5 if he wanted to. But I think Blake Griffin's the starting 5. I think your backup 5, you're probably Nick Claxton. Yeah. Nick Claxton's a good young player. Then this morning, Paul Millsap said he was joining the Nets, but then based on that news, LaMarcus Aldridge said he wants to join the Nets. So we have Claxton, we have LaMarcus Aldridge, possibly. We have Paul Millsap, we have Blake Griffin. We have DeAndre Jordan, who we assume is out the door.
He's
going to be out the door. And then they drafted in the first round this year, Daron Sharp. They traded Landry Shamet to the Suns, got this first round pick for Daron Sharp, who on paper sounds like a great fit for the modern NBA, a good young guy to kind of figure it out on a very, very deep team. Now, who knows if he'll ever play? And then, of course, there's Bruce Brown, who is like a guard, small forward, power forward, center.
Can I answer this question 2 different ways? The Cavs have too many centers.
Yeah.
The Nets, who are an assemblage of brittle-boned septuagenarians, that's fine for them to collect all these players and to use them in and out as players go up and down the IR. That's my official stance.
I do think this Nets team, as good as they are, as talented as they are, I think they are the rightful favorites, definitely in the Eastern Conference. They do have a little unbalanced thing going on with their roster. They if Kyrie misses his 20 games, which he likes to do, then they don't really have. I mean, I guess you go James Harden all one. They're actually kind of thin as far as guards. They have Harden, they have Kyrie, they have Patty Mills who can't dribble.
Pretty similar to the Clippers of last year, where if one guy gets hurt, the lack of ball handling is pretty outrageous.
Yeah,
but apparently, that seems to be the most eminently replaceable thing in the eyes of GM, since nobody stockpiles them. And big men are very clearly being stockpiled. Like, we're watching it in action. So I think this is probably just the way of things.
Well, John, you're probably right. Anyway, the Memphis Grizzlies, John, they're coming to our town. Not the actual all the players or anything.
They're resting. More big men, I think.
They're resting because there's 40 days until the NBA season starts for real. But this year's regional caravan is stopping in Nashville, Tennessee on September 10th. It's also coming to Murray, Kentucky, Little Rock, Arkansas, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and it will feature Grizzlies personalities and entertainers like the Grizz Girls, like Eric Hasseltine, like one Keith Parrish and Chuck Anderson.
Girls.
Hey,
sorry, guys.
Chuck and I are going to throw some T-shirts at the crowd. At the sound.
You guys get a Steve Ballmer T-shirt cannon?
I wish they would give us a hot dog gun. That'd be amazing.
You guys, if I was there, we would definitely do the Trinity thing where each of us holds a part of the slingshot and the third guy fires it off.
Who would be the firer? Who would be the?
I feel like it would be one of the fat guys, so me or Chuck. I guess me, since Chuck's slimming. Although he's in a caftan, and that's the most performative position, so perhaps he would want that one.
Yeah, it's true. So
I'm perfectly fine just stretching my arm.
If you are anywhere near Nashville, come on down on September 10th. If you're anywhere near these other locations, go to grizzlies.com and check the dates for when they're coming through. There's going to be giveaways. There's also basketball camps for kids that happen in a lot of these spots. Just check it out on grizzlies.com. Also, one lucky fan at each of these stops on the Grizzlies Caravan will win a weekend in Memphis getaway package that includes a 2-night stay at a downtown hotel, tickets to a Grizzlies game, and passes to local Memphis attractions. Visit grizzlies.com today. Well, anyway, John, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you next week. All right, thanks, man.
See ya. Bye. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, man, what's up?
Not much. How are you?
I'm doing good. Is all that just Sixers only talk? Does that work out?
Yeah. That's totally fine with me.
Awesome. Cool, man. You ready to roll?
Yeah, I'm good.
Great. I'm joined right now by Jackson Frank. Jackson, you're a first-time guest on Fast Break Breakfast. You might not know this. We start off talking about breakfast. It's early. You're on the West Coast, right?
That's right. I am. I absolutely am. It's 8:31 over here on the West Coast in Portland.
That's pretty good. Have you had a breakfast yet?
I have not. I'm thinking about some oatmeal today though. I've got a big variety pack of some Quaker oats in the corner that's been collecting dust, but I'm thinking
You're gonna dust that off.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I love Portland. I have fond memories of breakfasts in Portland. I feel like it's an exceptional breakfast city. You got all those food trucks, like a breakfast burrito everywhere. I feel like, I mean, this might be stereotyping Portland. I feel like they were kind of the initiators of like the brunch, like the breakfast bowl, like the hash. I mean, maybe it was a big city, maybe it was New York somewhere. I know that didn't come to Tennessee for a while. I first encountered it out in Portland, I'd say.
Yeah, there's a lot of great brunch spots. You can go with the acai bowls too if you want to stay a little healthier for a breakfast. A lot of great spots here. I live downtown, so I don't go out for breakfast very often because I like to stay in home and whatnot.
Yeah.
But if I have friends or family visiting, there's no shortage of places to go to take them and a wide variety of options.
I will say also, I think an early Portlandia sketch was just about the wait in line at the for brunch, basically.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the whole entire game. I'm not huge on waiting in line for food. That's one of my things, like
Me neither.
I'm willing to pay, I'm willing to pay a good amount for food, but I'm not willing to wait in line and pay a good amount. Like it's one of those, it's either or. Like, all right.
Yeah, especially breakfast because you haven't eaten for so long, and then you got to wait 45 minutes. You're like, I thought I was going to eat in 45 minutes, not get seated in 45 minutes. So I'm not big on it. I like efficiency with breakfast.
Are they serving me coffee in line? I can't wait that long to get my coffee. Anyway, let's talk a little bit. Despite you being on the West Coast, I think it's fair to say you're an expert on the Philadelphia 76ers. You know a lot about the 76ers. They are in the news because they apparently have done something wrong, and Ben Simmons is no longer interested in being on this team. All this talk of them shopping him. Obviously, there was the event in the playoffs, like the pass heard around the world where he passed up the open dunk, the struggles from the foul line. All of this kind of snowballed into now what was the 1 seed in the East last year and one of the best teams in the NBA the last 3 seasons. Feels like they're stuck. So, like, how do we get here, first of all? Like, how do we get here?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways if you want to trace it back. You can either look at the most you can go from latest to oldest, or you can go oldest to latest. I like to go oldest to latest because I think Ben Simmons is the one who deserves most of the culpability in this situation. Just hasn't really gotten tangibly better offensively. In the playoffs. I did a podcast yesterday with Paul Hudrick over at Liberty Ballers, and we were talking about how like that first second round against the Celtics was probably his best offensive showing. Which seems weird to think about now because it caught us by surprise because of the way that Ben was playing, with the close of the regular season against the Heat in the opening round series. The Raptors was okay. A lot, this Hawks one was obviously quite detrimental, but just hasn't improved tangibly. He hasn't really developed much of a post game despite being 6'10", 6'11". Can really still only finish with that right hand despite, shooting free throws left-handed. You would think that he could be a pretty good roller and screener, but he just has never consistently done that yet. Obviously, the jumper, is the most glaring, thing there. But he's 6'11". If he doesn't have to shoot, right? There's other things he can do. So it's that. There's been reports that he hasn't necessarily always been receptive to the development plan the Sixers have laid out, which is fine if you have a better alternative. But clearly, whatever he's done hasn't worked. But then most recently, I think it makes like the Sixers are right to be wanting to trade him. He just hasn't been that number 2 guy for a team that has an MVP candidate and a super solid Joel. But the way I think it's happened, it makes sense that Ben wouldn't want to play there, right? Like you want to go where you want it, wherever you have to work, you want to feel like that company is invested and committed to you or the organization, and the Sixers haven't shown that, and rightfully so. Like I'm not trying to say that he did anything incorrectly, but I understand why it's reached this point with Ben and his agency. Because you want to go somewhere where he's committed, and that just hasn't been the case under Daryl Morey's tenure. You can mention the other thing, like they chose him over Jimmy Butler. They wanted him to play point guard, but that's an old boss, right? Like those things don't really matter. So that's why I view things. It's not to blame the Sixers. I understand why they've done it, but they've been pretty brazen and open about their willingness to move him. And the James Harden thing, I get. Like, if you can get James Harden, you try and get him for Ben Simmons. But at the same time, like, Ben was coming off an All NBA year. They missed him in the playoffs. Like, maybe you're like thinking maybe there's some commitment to me from my new front office. So I understand all that. Ben deserves the majority of kind of the responsibility for why it's reached this point. But at the same time, I totally can see why he might not want to be a Philadelphia 76er moving
Yeah. The part of it that's weird to me as an outsider is like all this talk that's become kind of, I don't know, maybe it's like the party line of saying like Ben Simmons has failed to show improvement, in the playoffs. Like that is something that I don't feel like we heard about. Like going into this playoffs, no one was talking about that. Like no one was just like, oh, Ben Simmons is good. Like he's whatever. He's in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. He's an All NBA type player. And then it was just losing to the Hawks, where now this overwhelming narrative is this guy's never improved. Like now this guy has never fallen the offseason programs. And so some of it, to me, again, as an outsider, it feels like, well, this is just the front office spinning this, or like we've all kind of jumped on this narrative when it's still like, it seems like the Sixers are really good with him. If any number of bounces go a different way, like they could have easily made the Eastern Conference Finals this year. Like, it should have been them over the Hawks. Like but that could have happened if just like a couple things, go differently. There's other years where, he's injured in the playoffs where they get swept in the first round and you're like, oh, well, they got swept because Ben Simmons is not here. And so now it seems really weird where, and maybe it's just my timeline too on Twitter, where it seems like a lot of Sixers people are like, yeah, we're not a title contender. We need to take a step back. We can trade them even for picks or something. And for me, that's kind of shocking, where I'm like, you guys were, again, like the on-court product has been so good over the past few years. And even Ben Simmons, despite his limitations, like you say, like, he's never been like that, the screen and roll guy. Like, but it's like, who would he do that with? Like, there hasn't been, for me, like as much of a creator, like Seth Curry, like George Hill, another, like,
Yeah, the George Hill 76er experiment did not work well.
Yeah.
But I think within Sixers crowds, there's been a much more vocal hesitancy or apprehension about him, because year one, it was like, okay, it happened. Year two, he played a much smaller role. Jimmy Butler was the main creator there. And so like those years made sense, but you still always had entering year four, where it was like, he's gotten worse offensively. Like, not where he gets worse in the playoffs offensively beyond the first round than he does.
Yeah.
Like I kind of like the way I kind of phrase it is like, he's been an 86 game player. Like he's good in the regular season than the first round because the Sixers have a higher seed.
Oh,
totally fine. So I think at least as someone who's covered the Sixers for a while now, it's definitely been a more vocal apprehension of kind of Ben beyond the first round offensively. And yeah, they haven't had the best creator. They haven't had a dynamite pull-up shooter. I mean, even though Jimmy Butler was a very good crunch time scorer for them for most of his tenure, he's not the Dame Lillard, the Trae Young type guys, right? But I think they've had enough. Like Seth Curry really took on a pretty significant on-ball role this past playoffs. I mean, even at times from the regular season, you can even say Tyrese Maxey. Like they've had at least the guys where if Ben was a more consistent screener roller, that he would look better in that role. Obviously, yes, he would look best with a prime time creator. But I think there's been enough in place for him to be better in that role than he's been. But yeah, I mean, I think year four though was really just, if it felt like it really swelled, I think it's a combination of things. It's the fact that Joel took a leap. He went from kind of that, he's still I would just call him a top 10 player, but he went from a guy who was maybe not quite good enough to be an MVP, and then last year finished second. I think that's taking a step up. Seth Curry averaged 22 points on 1,000,000% true shooting. And so then year four, with like, you'd think those two factors should get you past the Hawks, especially a Hawks team that was missing DeAndre Hunter, who was and you can say that the Sixers were missing Danny Green for the second half of the series, which is true, but the Hawks were missing DeAndre Hunter for the entire series, and he was excellent for them when he played. And so year four, you're hoping like, okay, Ben, you've had a couple of times where you struggled in the second round. Like, what have you learned? Like, let's see kind of how you've taken that in stride and applied it to improve. And that just didn't happen. So I think it definitely felt like it was maybe amplified this year, but it's always been something that's swelled within Sixers circles. Just really came to a T this year, because this was I would say the 2019 team was a better team in the playoffs, but when you're the one seed and you're playing a team like, not the Hawks are bad, but you think like, okay, like the Hawks are down a key player. We have MVP, like we have, the idea that Doc Rivers is an experienced coach. Doc has his own faults, of course, but I think this year felt like really the opportunity for them to make that deep run finally with Joel and Ben. And because it didn't happen, and largely because of Ben's struggles, the calls and worries got bigger. But I think it's always been there. But maybe that's me living in that Sixers bubble because I've covered the team for 3 or 4 years.
That's it's tough because again, like if you want to signing blend's always hard, and when you talk about second round playoff failures, the sample size is always going to be so small. Like we're talking about a handful of games, and it's funny, like you mentioned, like the 86 game player. Part of my maybe basketball philosophy, I think, well, if you can get me to the second round of the playoffs, we're one of 8 teams. Like we're now one of 8 teams. That's basically the goal. Everyone's trying to get there. And so it seems kind of funny to be like, all right, to try to change paths when you can already get that far.
I think the way that I at least look at that is like, there's about 10 teams in the NBA in a given year that Ben will really struggle with. And part of the reason he's been good in the first round, some of it he deserves, praise, but they've been a higher seed. Right? They've been the 1, the 3, and the 3. So it's easier to continue to be an all-star level player when you're playing the 6th seed, and the 8th seed. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a 4, if Ben is on a team that's looking to be the 4, the 5, or the 6, or the 7, maybe like we're looking at some trade suitors, like it's harder to expect him. Like if he's going up against a 2 seed in the first round, there's a good chance he looks pretty poor offensively. So it's a really tough discussion. I'm curious to see wherever he lands, like if he makes the playoffs, how he looks in that first round. But he does deserve praise for having been an excellent first round player. I just don't know how to parse that out from a lower tier opponent versus actually being good in the first round.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's one of those, maybe that's also the Rudy Gobert conundrum. Like, is he a 86 game player? Like he's so dominant. And then it's like but it's again, like I think the Jazz were good enough basically to win the finals last year. Like if maybe Donovan Mitchell doesn't get banged up, like, are they good enough? And then these discussions become different. It's the Mike Budenholzer situation. Like, he's not good enough to win a championship as a coach. And then he is. And now you got like the Sixers, I don't want to say saddled, but like Doc Rivers has lost numerous playoff series. Not that he's just been ahead, but also as a higher seed. Like he's lost way more playoff series as a higher seed. That's not common.
No, I think, obviously Ben deserves, responsibility in their downfall, but Doc was really poor in that second round series. Like he put Shake Milton in the game to the first minutes in game 7 in the fourth quarter. Shake's a nice player. He's the fact that he's at least
got to see what's going to happen, right?
You just second round guy, but it just feels like he's throwing things like you got 12 minutes left, and he played Dwight Howard too much. I think Doc deserves a lot of responsibility as well that has gone attributed within Sixers circles, but in the general narrative, I think a lot of it is Ben. It's like, Ben was really poor offensively. He was still really key to that. I mean, their defense was still awesome in the second round. It was the offense that faltered. It was Ben. Tobias was really poor down the second half of that series too. So that's not to say that Ben isn't. I would say Ben is the leading on-court reason, but I think Doc deserves more responsibility, and even Tobias being not that guy as the lead perimeter creator. So the Doc stuff, I think it's like, even if whatever they get back for Ben, it's still tough to feel confident in their championship ceiling because of all the talent that Doc's had, and still, hasn't made a conference finals back since Boston. So this is 2 different spots now. So that's not to say that he's the bigger reason than Ben. I don't want to get into the percentage of responsibility, but I think in kind of the mainstream discourse outside of Sixers world, Doc has kind of gotten off a little too easy given his struggles in that series.
I think I might be misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure the last closeout game that Doc Rivers won in the second round of the playoffs was in the movie Uncut Gems. It was that series featured in the movie. So the way you're talking, it seems like you're not believing, like Joel Embiid tweeted on Wednesday, he would hope the team could come back as is. You feel like this is irreparable. The ship has sailed. The bridge has burned. Clutch is going to pull their guy out, and now the Sixers are scrambling to have to be forced to do something.
I think Joel and Ben talked a lot this year about the idea that their relationship was better, and I do genuinely believe that was the case. I think a lot. I don't think they've ever been like the best of friends, or they're not Dwayne Wade and LeBron James playing together trying to win titles, right? But I think a lot of the idea that the restraint came from the offensive lack of cohesion. Like you look at that and you're like, okay, well then what's the reason? What other reasons can we find eventually this pairing is going to split? I'm not saying that people are manufacturing things, but I think there was more of that than necessarily. Like if those guys were complementary on both sides of the ball, there wouldn't be these kind of inklings about their discordance, off the court. Maybe those things actually play together. Like if you don't work ideally together offensively, maybe that strange relationship. I'm not going to project or anything, but point being is, I have a tough time seeing like Joel wanting to run this back, given how well he's played and the degree to which his seemingly co-star has struggled. That's not that I'm saying he's not like, I'm not saying he's not telling the truth or anything. I'm sure that maybe he's privy to the offers on the table and he says it's better to just run it back, and which could be the case. I think like Daryl Morey as a GM has typically been pretty, transparent with his franchise superstar, whether it's Harden in Houston or now, Joel in Philly. But yeah, I think it's just, I think there's clearly some sort of like really close relationship that he feels for Ben, and he thought maybe Ben was getting piled on too much and wanted to kind of show some support. But yeah, I have a tough time seeing that Joel would feel really confident in their title chances if they brought everything back.
I love the idea of Morey being like, "Hey, Joel, the Kings have offered Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley." And Joel's like, we got to make this work. Like, hey, Ben's a great guy. Like, let's like, that's not an improvement. It's interesting. Like the Sixers offense has not been terrible. Like the past 4 years, just looking at like the cleaning the glass stats, like their points per possession, they're always top half of the NBA, which like, they're clearly the strength of the team is this dominant defense, but like they haven't struggled that bad. But anyway, so if this rift is, if it's done, you can't replace, or you can't get them back together, repair the relationship. What are you looking for? Like, what are these trades or anything out there that makes a lot of sense? Like the Damian Lillard thing doesn't make any sense to me now that what the Trailblazers have done this offseason, but like what kind of return now are you getting? 70 cents on the dollar? Like what kind of return are you thinking about?
It's interesting because I think the way that I've interpreted or thought about these things over the last 2.5 months and the season ended has evolved, as more news come out in time as, it progressed. But I think honestly at this point, I think to maximize their title odds long term, honestly, the better move is to get maybe a starting caliber player and a rotation guy, and then get some picks. Like that sounds weird to do, and Daryl Morey's never been one to really hoard picks. I mean, there was a stretch in Houston where they never had a first round pick or whatever for half a decade. But I think that is more enticing if you're trying to actually find that star, whether it's Dame asks out in 8 months or Beal declines his player option or something like that. Like that is more enticing to Washington or Portland, or maybe the Chicago experiment doesn't go well and Zach LaVine, decide he's not committed to. I think that is more interesting to a rebuilding team than, a bunch of quality rotation guys that are 24 to 28 years old. I think picks always seem to be more enticing, just the unknown. And maybe like Tyrese Maxey takes a step forward next year and it becomes more than just an intriguing young guy, a guy who's a legit rotation player on a very good team. That carries a lot of intrigue. Still, he'd be 21 years old. So that sounds like it sounds not ideal. And the reality is the Sixers are in a very suboptimal situation in terms of actually reaching that title contender status around Joel. But I think if you're trying to play the long game, because you're not going to get the star, as you've said right now, those guys aren't available. They'll become available. Like it'll happen. The NBA moves so quickly. But I think the better idea is to move him for a couple of rotation guys you can bank on and get some picks. I think there was a report out of the Athletic from Minnesota's side that discussed a lot of picks, discussed Jaden McDaniels, Malik Beasley, and Jaden's another young guy that, maybe in a year from now is even more intriguing than he is currently. So that's the way I would go. I think it really has to be a multi-step process for the Sixers to potentially even get to that title contender status, but it remains very challenging regardless. And that's a really tough situation to be in.
Isn't Malik Beasley a clutch guy? Is that a problem? I'm gonna Google that right now. I think he is. I think Malik Beasley released from jail 2 weeks ago.
He might be a clutch guy, but they also have Maxey in there.
That's right.
I know that there was the initial report that said that Maxey was maybe going to, or Rich Paul might have wanted Maxey out, but then that was refuted. So I don't know exactly how that would work.
He was a clutch guy, but he's not as of less than a year ago. So, yeah. He left clutch. Hey, there you go.
Yeah. Well, no Ant Edwards in that case, though.
That's right.
That's right. The Wolves should be trading Anthony Edwards for Ben
of course.
But yeah, I think that's it. But all this is to say that, like, it's a really, really tough sell. Like, they're just not. I mean, it's just very unlikely they actually compete for a title in the next 2 or 3 years. Which isn't like Daryl's made some missteps, you can say, but a lot of it ties back to previous regimes and mistakes. So that's my idea is to go for kind of the pick centric deal. because I think that really maximizes your chance of landing a guy in a year or half a year. But I mean, in a year, Joel Embiid's going to be almost 28, or no, he's going to be almost 29. He turns 28 in March. So,
I'd have a hard time. I'd have a hard time if I'm running the Sixers, knowing that, all right, Embiid is clearly in his prime, second in the MVP last year, arguably on a per minute basis could have been the MVP. Like, he's ready. Mm-hmm. And I want to win as many games as possible next season and the season after that, because you're not promised anything. You never know what's going to happen. And when you look at the league right now, I feel like it's kind of open. You think about the Lakers, they're title favorites, they're the betting favorites, or I guess the Nets are. But like you got the Nets, you got the Bucks, you got the Lakers, and then it's like, if the Sixers were able to replace Ben Simmons with just okay, good players, offensive fits, and you think, all right, could they be there on the same level with the Jazz and the Suns? And for me, it's like, if you're one of the top 6 teams, that's all you can ask for a lot of years. You're never going to get a better shot. Yeah.
You look like, in the Hawks, I think are very good. But I don't think when everyone was healthy last year in the East, they were one of the 2 best teams. It's not to disparage. It's more the point that you get so much of like a success in the playoffs is just circumstances. And that's not to criticize the Hawks at all, but the Sixers, if they can get to a point where they can benefit from those circumstances, one reason or another, maybe a guy has a cold shooting stretch from their team, or unfortunately a guy gets injured, to be able to capitalize on that is all you need to do. So yeah, I don't know what the optimal path is. And it feels like antithetical to a Daryl Morey led team to waste the prime of a guy like Joel, because Joel, like, he, in a lot of ways, honestly, he is like, you can see why Daryl thinks so highly of him, because Daryl loved James Harden. They're different players, but you can find a lot of overlap there if you're doing a Venn diagram between the two of them, broadly speaking. So it feels weird, but I think if you're really trying to say, hey, maybe in a year, maybe next summer, we're a leading contender in trade negotiations because we have these 4 picks and these 2 pick swaps and these 3 picks. So it's tough, but I get at the same time, like, they're just not going to win a title with this current core. Like, it's just, they don't, like, Tobias Harris is not the perimeter shot creator they need, like the lead one. Ben clearly is not that sort of guy either. Even Joel is an incredible player, but he's probably not your lead shot creator. If he is, you need someone who's better than Ben, Tobias, or Seth Curry. I mean, Seth Curry was our second best shot creator, and he's fabulous. He's a very good role player. But if that's the guy you're running offense on the perimeter beyond Joel, you're probably in a tough spot offensively. So I think just finding something to lighten the load for Joel offensively is really what you need, because even he struggled a lot kind of in some of those 4 quarters against the Hawks. And that's more a product of roster construction than his own faults. But yeah.
There haven't been a lot of rumors or anything about the teams that have a bunch of excess picks. Like, I'm thinking of, the Thunder, the Pelicans, and even the Grizzlies, where they all have all their own picks and then a bunch of others. And it's like, I wonder if any of those teams would be willing. Like, I've talked a lot on my Grizzlies shows, like, I don't think it makes a ton of sense for the Grizzlies to try to, like, 4 first-round picks and junk, like, that doesn't, I don't think that helps either team a ton. I mean, maybe like you're saying, it replenishes the Sixers, and then they can use those picks to trade later. But it does seem like, I mean, the Pelicans, the matching salary is weird. They don't have anyone who could, I feel like, help on the court this year. But like, would those teams or the Thunder decide, hey, let's play? I mean, it's hard to imagine any of those circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get the Grizzlies argument. I'm sure you've talked extensively. They're kind of in a place where they have like too many good players for their own sake.
Yeah.
That can't just, there's diminishing returns there. That's an overused phrase, I think, and I'm guilty of it, but I think it absolutely applies to the Grizzlies. But it doesn't even have to be a team with a surplus of picks, just one that has all of its picks moving forward. The Wolves, again, are where this kind of idea was sparked. They've been kind of dominating the conversations, right? In terms of the leading suitor for Ben Simmons. The Warriors have all their picks as well, I believe, moving forward. So it's less about
the Grizzlies have one of the Warriors.
Okay,
24.
Okay. It's less about like these teams that have really, really kind of stockpiled picks via trades and whatnot, but just more that like the teams that have the ability to do what the Lakers did, to get AD, where like the Lakers didn't have like a surplus of picks, but they had everything moving forward at the time, so they can trade all those. So obviously Ben will not go for an AD package. But he does have 4 years left, and like, for all of his faults, he's a 3-time All-Star. He's 25 years old. 3-time first all defense, second runner-up, or second place in DPOY. Like, absolutely has his faults, and I've been very critical of him. But at the same time, like, he's a player that can help get you to the playoffs, and for a lot of teams, like, just getting there would be meaningful. The team like the Kings, there was a report yesterday from Sam Amick about kind of what the Kings would be willing to put out there. And I mean, they haven't made the playoffs in 15 years. So
15 seasons.
And they've had, I was looking, I know that they've played in the West and the Ben Simmons played in the East, but it's wild. Ben Simmons has made as many All-Star appearances the last 4 years as the Kings have had since 2005 or 6. They're clearly that's a little reductive because of the opposing conferences, but still, like those teams like that are looking to just get into the playoffs could really benefit from Ben's talent on both sides of the ball. Clearly more defensively inclined, but I think I get the idea for those sorts of teams, and a lot of picks might be overdoing it. Like I don't know exactly what I give up for Ben, but I think that's where the Sixers should be going if they can.
Yeah, it's a hard position for those teams. Like if I'm running the Timberwolves or the Kings, I know the scenario, and I'm like, listen, I don't want to give up picks. I'm willing to give you players, but like I don't want to give up a ton of picks because, like you said, we want to have sustained success, and getting Ben Simmons is nice. And I know the Sixers are now backed into a corner essentially. But man, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Do you have a prediction? I guess last thing, like what's your feeling?
The Timberwolves just seem like the one for me. Like they need more talent around, Cat and Ant. Them not having their pick this year, I think was tough. Like they want to compete next year, and they could. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs as currently constructed, but I think they could be a fine team. Like I think what the Kings did a few years ago when they nearly made the playoffs, won 39 games, or like I think that could be the Wolves. But at the same time, like the clock is kind of ticking for Cat, right? Like I think they probably feel some pressure to put a win around him. And there's just been so much smoke, and they have good players. They have all their picks. I think that's most likely to me, but I could also see a 3-teamer involving San Antonio. Maybe we haven't mentioned them. They've got a lot of young guys.
Yeah.
So I think those would be my two. If I had to put money down, that would be where I think Ben Simmons is playing his next NBA game. Whenever that happens, I don't know exactly, but those are my bets for now. And I don't know. I think like I'm not like, I don't know. I look forward to this entire situation being resolved for everyone involved, for Ben himself to be somewhere where he feels wanted, for the Sixers to, have a new core in place, for everyone who covers the team. Like I've probably done, 15, 17 podcasts at this point over the last 2.5 months about Ben.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to new topics and actually being able to know like what the heck is this team going to look like. It's hard. It's been so hard to do Sixers stuff because I have no idea what the roster is going to look like in a month and a half. But that's my prediction. I put the Wolves 1 and the Spurs 2. Maybe them kind of working a 3-teamer in there, seeing what happens.
I can't wait for Sixers fans to discover that D'Angelo Russell is bad. It's gonna be awesome.
A lot of them are not huge on him either. He wouldn't solve all their issues, unfortunately. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, those are my picks.
All right. Well, thanks, Jackson. Really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully you'll come on again sometime.
Absolutely. Appreciate having me on.
All right. I'm going to ask you some questions about the Lakers and their salaries, and I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's going to be fun.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right. It's now time for the last drop. That's right. We named a new segment. This is the last drop, and I'm joined right now by my good buddy, Daman Rangoola. That's
wait, who's sponsoring this segment?
It's still the Grizzlies. If they want to farm that out to somebody else, we're open to it. Okay. If you have any leads for some good companies that want to sponsor the last drop. But Daman, thanks for coming on. I have some questions to ask you about your Los Angeles Lakers. Now,
yes, sir.
Earlier in the week, I was throwing out there, are this year's Lakers possibly the wealthiest team ever assembled? And I'm obviously not talking about the poverty franchise. I'm not talking about your poor owner. No, I'm talking about.
I was about to say, yeah, she's probably more cash strapped than most of the teams.
Yeah. She's not even worth $1 billion. Come on. That's embarrassing. But the players, I'm talking about their career earnings.
Oh boy.
Now, what I'm going to have you on, I'm putting you on the spot. This is what the people want.
I am not prepared for this.
They want, no, I did not give you any heads up whatsoever. I want you to rank the current Los Angeles Lakers based on just their on-court career earnings, just the salaries that they have been paid by their NBA franchises. And we're including their salaries for this season.
Okay.
I got these numbers off of Spotrac. I never know how to say that. Is it Spotrac? I have no idea. Spotrac.com. This is career earnings of the Los Angeles Lakers. I will tell you right now, I added it up. The Lakers right now, They have career earnings combined of over $2.2 billion.
Yeah, that's
That is
more money than the Bus
nonsense.
family has.
That is nonsense. I'm talking, if you look at the top 10 players on the Lakers, I'm not even including rookies. I'm not even including this Kakak. No, I'm talking the top 10 players on the Lakers in their careers just in the NBA, not endorsements, have made a combined $2.2 billion. So, Daman, can you rank them in order?
I am looking at the roster, nothing else.
That's fine. If you don't know the roster by heart, I can't blame you because your team changes players every season. It's hard for fans to keep up. A lot of smaller market fans, we get to develop a relationship with our players. You know, they put roots in the community. It's really exciting. Lakers are like, hey, you 10 guys, you're out. Let's get a new 10 guys in this year. I'm sure it'll work out great. All right. Who has made the most money on the Lakers? Again, non-endorsements, just through salary.
So I think there's one thing I know, and I remember looking this up. LeBron is not as high as we think it should be. So I'm going to say, because he hasn't signed that mega max.
You're overthinking it.
Really? So it's not Russell Westbrook?
No, it's LeBron.
Okay.
So it's LeBron. LeBron so far has $387 million in just NBA
he's also been
earnings.
in the league so long. Yeah.
He has more. LeBron James has earned more money in his career than every player on the Grizzlies combined has made together. LeBron's at 387. The Grizzlies clock in around 366 million. Combined earnings for their entire. Well, I mean, the Grizzlies don't want players who have any NBA experience. Steven Adams holding the Grizzlies up with $127 million in career earnings. All right, LeBron is number one. So that's not tricky.
Is Russell Westbrook number two?
Russell Westbrook is number two. Westbrook, who has, I believe, $289 million career earnings. All right, so we have LeBron and Westbrook, the richest two Lakers.
Is number three? Man, is number three Carmelo Anthony?
Absolutely. Good job. Good work. Carmelo Anthony with the paltry $263 million estimated career earnings, not including endorsements. All right. So that's a solid bill for the top three. LeBron James, Westbrook, and Carmelo.
I'm going to go Dwight Howard next.
Oh, you're on fire. Dwight Howard, $245 million in career earnings. That's about $250 million for playing basketball. Yes.
Goodness.
You're doing great.
All right. Next, I will go. I think now we're heading towards Anthony Davis territory.
You got it. Anthony Davis. He's at 188. With that feels low.
That feels super low.
That feels a little bit low. It feels a little bit low. All right. So you're doing great. All right. Keep rolling.
Okay. Now it gets trickier. So just based on years he's been in the league, oh man, this is tough. I'm gonna say Rajon Rondo.
No,
not even close.
That
face wasn't.
I will say because of my poker face giving that away, Rajon Rondo has made surprisingly little, relatively compared to his other extremely wealthy teammates.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man. Now it's getting bad.
Well, I mean, Rondo's in the top 10. But I'm just saying, no. We have you got the first five right.
Is it? Oh man, is it Trevor Ariza?
No, he's on the list though.
Oh man. Oh, is it our guy Mark?
Marcus Gasol. Marcus Gasol got paid a max for a lot of years from the Grizzlies. Marcus Gasol with $182 million in career earnings. He is sixth.
I by the way, I'm worried about our guy. I don't know if he's gonna be on the roster.
Yeah. He is sixth. You already threw out who was number 7. It is Trevor Ariza.
Okay.
Trevor Ariza with 118. Then comes 7th is Rajon Rondo, as you've thrown out. He's only made 116, which that feels low.
Yeah, it feels low.
It feels low. I think he was on a really good deal. I feel like on the Celtics, like the peak of his career. I don't think he was getting paid. I think
he got hurt right before I think he was going to get paid, and then he got traded to Dallas, and that was that was the end of his big money days.
Yeah. I will say losing Andre Drummond kind of hurt this exercise. I wish Andre Drummond was still there with his $139 million in career earnings. All right, we have done the top 7.
Okay.
Now we're the 8th richest.
So are you counting Wes Matthews?
All right, if we include Wes Matthews, should we include Wes Matthews? Do you know something? Is he going to be on the team?
He is still on the Lakers team roster on the website. So that's all I'm basing it off of right now.
Let's include Wes Matthews, and he would be next then. He would be next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we're including Wes Matthews, that means that's fine. So I'm bumping out who I had in 10th. Wes Matthews would be 8th at $109 million in career earnings.
Wow, he's crossed 100. Okay.
All right.
Oh boy.
You got 2. You got 2 more.
Okay. Is the next Kent Bazemore? Yes,
sir.
He's had one big deal. Yeah. Okay.
He had a big deal. He got a summer of 16 deal. Kent Bazemore, $79 million in career earnings. Kind of surprising.
This summer of 2016, the Lakers are very well aware.
All right. So our top 9, you got LeBron, you got Westbrook, Carmelo, Dwight Howard, Anthony Davis, Marc Gasol, Trevor Ariza, Rajon Rondo. We're including Wes Matthews, then Kent Bazemore. Who is your 10th richest as far as NBA career earnings, Los Angeles Laker, or your 5th poorest, if you want?
Yeah, we're headed towards 5th poorest territory. We're barely touching 100 mil.
That's right.
Some change.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. This is a little bit of a wild card. Probably wrong, but I'm still gonna go Wayne Ellington.
It is Wayne Ellington.
Okay,
yeah. It's like the only veteran left.
Yeah, the age wise. Yeah,
you have the very poor Malik Monk, Kendrick Nunn, never gotten big paydays in their lives.
By the way, you can tell how much of like a capitalist pig I am. That I feel like I did better than I should have.
No, you did great. You did great. Wayne Ellington has only made $48 million in his NBA career. Pathetic. So that is your wealthiest Los Angeles Lakers, a combined earnings over $2 billion. The next closest may be, breaking news on Thursday, Paul Millsap has joined the Nets, raising their combined career earnings pretty nicely. They're up around, this is very, very rough, but approximately $1.6 billion. Where you have
they're going to give James Harden a big deal, right?
Right. I mean, you have some big earners there with obviously. I mean, also, but once they let it go of DeAndre Jordan, they're going to drop back down. Drop back down to like a 1.5 billion. But anyway, that was the last drop. Daman, thanks for coming on. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much.
Guys out there listening, if you don't follow Daman on Twitter, I don't blame you. It's kind of intense.
I don't blame you.
A lot of Lakers exceptionalism.
Yeah, no pressure.
Hard to stomach. Anyway, buddy, look forward to the next time.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. Yeah, it was fun, man. Thank you.
That was good. Have a great day.
You too, man.
See you, bud.